सर्वेभ्यः नमस्कारः। अत्र यः ब्राह्मणः योगी योगिनी वा सर्वानपि लोकान् सर्वादृशानपि अनुभवान् प्राप्य स्वेन कर्मणा कृतान् सर्वानपि प्रयत्नान् भुक्त्वा यदा निर्वेदम् आप्नुवन्ति, यदा बीभत्सभावम् आप्नुवन्ति, तदा किमपि न अवशिष्टं कर्तुं तैः। तस्मात् परं किं भवति? ते एकं ब्रह्मनिष्ठं श्रोत्रियं गुरुं वा गच्छेयुः, समर्पणभावेन गच्छेयुः। समर्पणभावेन गत्वा गुरुम् आश्रित्य ज्ञानं प्राप्नुयुः इति एतस्य श्लोकस्य तात्पर्यमस्ति। तस्मै स विद्वानुपसन्नाय सम्यक् प्रशान्तचित्ताय शमान्विताय येनाक्षरं पुरुषं वेद सत्यं प्रोवाच तां तत्त्वतो ब्रह्मविद्याम्। तस्मै स विद्वानुपसन्नाय सम्यक् प्रशान्तचित्ताय शमान्विताय येनाक्षरं पुरुषं वेद सत्यं प्रोवाच तां तत्त्वतो ब्रह्म विद्याम्। तस्मै सः सः इत्युक्ते अत्र गुरुः तस्मै ब्राह्मणाय तस्मै योगिने उपासकाय उपासिकायै वा विद्वान् उपसन्नाय, उपसन्नः इत्युक्ते यः आशयं प्राप्तवान् अस्ति, Upasannaha, one who has approached the Guru, one who is the Ashrita here, Samyak Prashanta Chittaya, Prashanta Chittaya, Tasya Chittam, Ati Shantam, Ityeva Prashantam iti, Prakrishtena Shantam asti, their mind is already so supremely calm. Their mind is already so supremely calm owing to the releasing, the freeing sense of nirveda, the disgust to both themselves as well as the world and all its offerings. Because of such extreme wise disgust, which is not physiological merely, it's a psychological disgust and a philosophical disgust, in fact. So their mind has now realized that there is actually no point in going after anything at all. So it has now come to a standstill, which is itself the state of prashanta chittata. And then shamanvitaya, not only is their mind calm, but also they also have shama. Shama means cessation. It literally means cessation, to stop. Shama means something to cede. So they have shama as one of their gunas. And shama means where their organs, sense organs, and the inner faculty have reached a state of end. They have reached a state of having been extinguished. Their passions for the world have now been doused with water. Doused with water. And so now they have a supreme clarity of thought and serenity within themselves. And they have come to the Vidwan. They have come to the... So here scholar does not literally mean one well-versed with scripture and information, because, I mean, in that, by that yardstick, today's AI and Google would be the greatest scholar there is. Right? So now Vidwan here refers to one having experiential knowledge of what they are talking about when they have been approached. Yena aksharam purusham veda satyam tat tam brahma vidyam tatvatah provacha. And in such a case, what the guru will do is brahma vidyam tatvatah provacha. They will do the upadesha, they will give the exposition of what the brahma vidya is through complete understanding. Tatvatah, by full understanding. Tattva means philosophy or tenets of wisdom. By total understanding, the length to breadth understanding of Brahma Vidya, they give the exposition of that to the Shishya here, which is of the nature of Satyam, Purusham, Aksharam, Yena, Veda, which is of the nature of being able to know, and know here in quotes. Here, know means not through buddhi, but experience. By through experience, they will know the Satya, the manifestation, the Purusha, the entity which causes this world, and that which is the Akshara, which is immutable. Such kind of Brahma Vidya they will do an Upadesha of. They will show a pointer to such a state. He, the learned preceptor, which is the Guru, who knows the Brahman, Upasannaya means one who has approached him or her, Samyak, according to the Shastras, Prashanta Chittaya, which is whose heart is subdued and free from all faults such as pride and such, Shamanvitaya, who has control over their external senses, that is, who has turned away from all the things of the world, by which knowledge, by this Paravidya, which is called as the Brahma Vidya, the Akshara, which is somehow imperceivable, can still be known. This is the paradox of Vedanta, denoted by the word Parasha, because it is all pervading. Because it is seated in the city of, sorry, it should be Purusha, not Parasha. Purusha, because it is all pervading and seated in the city of the body. Purishete. Satyam, the same, because it is truth in its nature. Akshara, which has no decay, which is scatheless and knows no destruction, which means that which can, where pain cannot touch it, where suffering cannot touch it. Such is the state of Akshara. That will be known. Veda. Let him teach that knowledge of Brahman as it must be taught. This is the duty of also the preceptor, that he should make the good pupil duly approaching him cross the sea of ignorance. Iti prathama mundake dvitiya khandaha. So the previous verse talked of how the Shishya must approach the Guru, while this mantra is talking of what the Guru must do after the Shishya, the eligible Shishya has come to him or her. So what are the qualities? Upasannaya Samyak, one who comes with humility, who is in a state of absolute serenity, and one who has control over their externalities and dependencies. To such a person who is ready now for the truth, the Guru must point to it. Let's now move to the Dvitiya Mundaka. तदेतत् सत्यं यथा सुदीप्तात् पावकात् विस्फुलिङ्गाः सहस्रशः प्रभवन्ते सरूपाः तथाक्षराद् विविधाः सौम्यभावाः प्रजायन्ते तत्र चैवापि यन्ति तद् एतत् सत्यं यथा सुदीप्तात् पावकात् विस्फुलिङ्गाः सहस्रशः प्रभवन्ते सरूपाः तथा अक्षरात् विविधाः भावाः प्रजायन्ते तत्र च एवापि यन्ति. तद् एतत् सत्यं. This is true. What is true? Tad etat satyam. That. So a very strange expression is used in Sanskrita, which means tad etat satyam means when they use these two together, that is this. That is this. Tad etat satyam means that satya which was spoken about is this. Tad etat satyam. This is also true, or that which is spoken as truth is this, that yatha sudiptat pavakat visphulingaha sahasrashaha sarupaha prabhavante, just as yatha sudiptat pavakat, of a flame which is very well lit, which is of a blazing undousable fire, pavakat visphulingaha sahasrashaha prabhavante, there are so many sparks which come out of these flames, thousands of them, sahasrashaha prabhavante sarupaha, and they are sarupaha. they also have the same nature and form of the original spark which pregnated this entire phenomena. Similarly, tatha aksharat vividhaha bhavaha prajayante tatra cha eva apiyanti. Similarly, from that very Brahma, which is called the Akshara, Vividha Bhava, plurality arises, which is of the same form as the Akshara itself, but lesser in its gunas, prajayante, tatra chaiva apiyanti, and those sparks go back into the very old parent spark or the parent fire, the parent body. This is the idea here. What does this mean? It means, therefore, because Akshara is what is creating these bhavas and into which the bhavas go back, it is verily the God of the bhavas. Right here, bhavas means all creations itself. And a beautiful poetic analogy given here is from a very well lit fire, a campfire, you can imagine how these sparks emanate and they go back into the very own heat of the fire. They stay for a few while and then they just dissolve into the atmosphere, right? So that way they come from the very same nature, they still have the same nature and they go back to their original nature of heat itself. Okay, this is a very detailed commentary. Let's read this. Everything made as a result of aparavidya has been stated. The entirety known as the Purusha from which the samsara derives its strength, from which its immortal source it proceeds into, which again it is absorbed, is true. The subsequent portion of the book has now begun for the purpose of explaining to him who, being known, all will become known, and who is the subject of Brahma Vidya. The Satyam or truth, which is the subject of the Apara Vidya, which is the nature of the fruits of karma, is only relatively true. But this, which is the subject of Paravidya, is absolutely true, being defined as the absolute existence. This Satyam is real, being the subject of knowledge. The other Mithya, which is false, being the subject of ignorance. How could men directly cognize the immortal and real Purusha, seeing that it is altogether beyond the reach of perception? To this end, Shruti gives an example. As from the well-fed sparks, that is, particles of fire issue forth like a thousands of fire in their own form. So from the immortal abode described, the diverse jivas, diverse because of the difference of conditions, come into existence. Just as from Akasha, the spaces enclosed within it, as were the limits of a pot, as these spaces undergo varieties corresponding to the varieties of the conditions as pot, etc. So also the jivas, according to the varieties of their bodies created by names and forms. The jivas are absorbed into the immortal Purusha when the bodies conditioning them cease to exist, as the various cavities cease to exist, when the pots, etc., cease to exist. As the origin and destruction of the various cavities in the Akasha are due to its being enclosed in a pot, so also the cause and absorption of the Jiva are due to the Akshara being conditioned by bodies bearing names and forms. Anyhow, the long and short of that commentary is that this analogy of the fire which is emitting these sparks is important to answer the question if the previous mantras told that this akshara is unknowable, imperceivable, and so on, then what use is any of this, right? What use is any of this exercise? So then the answer is just as this fire, which is of the very same nature of whatever plasma and so on, is responsible for the creation of the smaller sparks, which in their own right, they can grow into an entirely different, an entirely similar fire given ambient conditions, given optimal conditions. Similarly is the case with the Brahman or the Akshara, because all the jivas or all of this creation which has issued forth out of it is also verily of this very same nature of infinitude as the Brahman, as the Akshara. And the only difference, seeming difference, is of conditions, of fuel, of time, and so on and so forth. but by nature they are still the same. That is the first argument. The second argument, which the commentator here, the Bhashyakara Shankaracharya gives, is that of the very famous Akasha and the pot example. Think of this way: there is the Akasha, the space, and you have created a small pot which is empty. Now the question is the space inside the pot different from the ambient Akasha, or is it the same? And if you create different vessels, then you can say there's a different volume of space inside each of these containers. So then is there truly a difference between the space outside and the space inside? It's a matter of perspective, is it not? From the person sitting inside the vessel, it would say yes, that this space here is different from the volume outside. The air inside is different from the air outside. But from the perspective of a person sitting in the air itself or in the space outside itself, it is merely that you have drawn a boundary here, a vanishing boundary, and then calling this space as being different from the sample space, is it not? So, in such a case, there is no fundamental difference between the ambient space and the inside spot. Similarly, there is no fundamental difference between the sparks of fire emitted by the parent and the parent itself. So, in as far as their nature is concerned, they are the same, verily the same. And finally, they also dissolve back into the parent itself. In what sense? You see, you shouldn't take the example too literally. Let's not stretch the example, but let's just take the implication of it. Now, these are upamas. They are using examples, analogies to say or point to a state which they already know is true by its own validity. They are not using the example to prove that this is true. You understand the difference? They are not using the example between the fire and the spark and the relationship between them to prove that this is also the case between Brahman and Jiva. That is not so. They're using it as a pedagogical example to show that this is what supposedly the relationship between the Jiva and the Jagat and the Brahman looks like. This is an important distinction to keep in mind. This is very fundamental to Vedanta. Many people make this mistake. दिव्यो ह्यमूर्तः पुरुषः स बाह्याभ्यन्तरो ह्यजः अप्राणो ह्यमनः शुभ्रो ह्यक्षरात् परतः परः दिव्यो ह्यमूर्तः पुरुषः स बाह्याभ्यन्तरो ह्यजः अप्राणो ह्यमनः शुभ्रो ह्यक्षरात् परतः परः दिव्यः हि अमूर्तः पुरुषः सः बाह्य अभ्यन्तरः हि अजः अप्राणः अमनाः हि शुभ्रः हि अक्षरात् परतः परः सः पुरुषः, that purusha, that entity called akshara which is being spoken of is divyah. It is of the nature of light. Amurtaha. Amurta is that which has no corporeal form. No corporeal form. Divyo Amurtaha Purushaha, that is an entity. Saha Bahyabhyantaraha, it exists within and without. So it is the universal set. If you were to draw a Venn diagram of small subsets. Now, if I ask you where is the universal set or the sample space, you will say it exists both within each set as well as outside every set. So by definition, it is the universal set. So it should exist both inside and outside particular subsets. Bahya bhyantaraha hi ajaha. It is ajaha. It is without destruction and without change and without birth. So birth here is not limited to just living organisms. Of course, it is the vital force itself which has no birth or death, but it can also mean coming into a different form is also in a way a birth. For example, if I dropped a ball, right, from a very tall building, so you can say kinetic energy is born because it went from a state of being zero to a state of being non-zero, whereas potential energy decayed. So kinetic energy is also born. So any change at all, this delta, this any change at all is represented by the is represented metaphorically by the word ja, meaning birth. So aja means which is completely changeless because there cannot be a state apart from it. Apranaha, there is no prana in it, there is no manas in it, but still it remains pure. Why? What in what sense is it shubhra? So it comes from the word shubha, shubh dhatu, shumbhati, meaning that which shines. So shubhra means something which is very reflective, and we shall encounter this epithet, this adjective very often in this upcoming Mundaka verses. Shubhra is that which is reflective, very clean, almost so clean that it is almost transparent or it is reflective, right? So it reflects the mind, it reflects the whatever the creation is around it, but it is also uh, it has nothing of its own. Shubhraha aksharat parataha paraha. It is even in fact beyond the akshara itself, you can say, and that is the supreme paraha. Now, this is a very, the mischief that Vedanta does. It often indulges and it, in fact, there is great joy in bringing such paradoxes with it. It talked about something which is unchangeable as the Brahma. And then the very immediate words it said, no, there is something where Brahma is also, this Brahma is also created. And then they talked about Brahma, the Prajapati, the Srishtikarta, and then they said there is a state beyond this and so on and so forth. They love to play with these hierarchies and they like to mix things around. And then they say there is the Akshara which is beyond it. But now this verse is saying, no, there's something also beyond this Akshara also, which is called the Purusha. But then they had said this Brahma itself is the Purusha. You see, they are playing with words, they are playing with these hierarchies to drive the point, I feel, home that these hierarchies actually don't mean at all anything much. You mustn't take, or we mustn't take these hierarchies too seriously and make it into a pyramid or a cultish, mm, you know, a cultish system. What it here just means is something which is even beyond Akshara means when I, now what is the point they're trying to derive? The point, the theorem that they're trying to derive is that any characterization by language is useless. Any form of categorization, any form of cataloging, if that's a word, uh, is pointless. And that is the point which is being driven here, which is being emphasized here through such iterative, self-reflective hierarchies. Okay? And the other words are pretty straightforward. Let's see what his take on. Oh, this is a lot. Okay, let me quickly read through it. I will be skipping many parts of it if it is already explained. With a view to describe the nature of that akshara, which is beyond that which is known as the avyakrita, the unmanifest. You see, they are using very similar words for different things. Sometimes avyakta, avyakrita, mahat, akshara, and so on. The seed of all name and form and transcending its own modifications, which is devoid of all varieties of condition of all forms, etc., etc. Now he's just describing all those words. And the akshara, which is beyond all the avyakrita, whose nature is indicated as the seed condition of all name and form, as it is known to be the seed of all causes and effects. The param, because the akshara, also known as the avyakrita, is in its condition above all modifications. The purusha, etc., in whom is the akshara, akasha, war, woof. How then is it said to be without prana? It prana, etc., existed as such in their own forms before their creation, like the Purusha. And the Purusha can be said to be with the prana because of their then existence. But they, the prana, do not, like the Purusha, exist in their own forms before their creation. So the highest Purusha is without prana, etc. So when you say amanaha, aprana, etc., what does it mean? The original seed form of akshara, or that which is beyond, did not really have prana, manas, and so on. So in that sense, it is aprana, amanaha, aja, amurta, and so on. But once the manifestation happened, still it remains unchanged. But the prana, the sense of the prana, exists now in conjunction with the akshara. So it is dependent on the akshara, but the akshara is not dependent on it. So in such a superior form, the akshara is said to be aprana and amanas. This is the take of Shankaracharya. About the aksharat paraha, he is just saying the akshara here, which refers to something which is beyond name and form. Uh, Here refers to the avyakrita, the seed form of the creation. So if you compress all the name, form, duality, the lokas, the jivas, all energy, phenomena, etc., into a singular point or a seed, that is called as the avyakrita or the akshara, which is also still indestructible. But there is an essence again beyond the seed as well, which is the para, which is the paraha, which is that purusha, which is the divyaha, ajaha, apranaha, amanaha. Because all that prana manas is captured and capsuled in the capsule form is present in the seed. So this is some hierarchy that is being talked about. I'm not really convinced much. I hope you can throw some light over it, the viewers. एतस्माज्जायते प्राणो मनः सर्वेन्द्रियाणि च खं वायुर्ज्योतिरापः पृथिवी विश्वस्य धारिणी एतस्माज्जायते प्राणः मनः सर्व इन्द्रियाणि च खं वायुः ज्योतिः आपः पृथिवी विश्वस्य धारिणी पृथिवी च जायन्ते. So from that seed, etasmad aksharat, prana, manas, indriyani, kham, akasha, vayu, agni, water, prithvi, cosmic fluids, solids, gases, plasma, uh, void, and all of these which carry the Vishwa, which constitute the Vishwa, are created. This is pretty straightforward. I will be skipping the commentary for this. अग्निर्मूर्धा चक्षुषी चन्द्रसूर्यौ दिशश्रोत्रे वाग्विवृताश्च वेदाः वायुः प्राणो हृदयं विश्वमस्य पद्भ्यां पृथिवी ह्येष सर्वभूतान्तरात्मा. अग्निर्मूर्धा tasya purushasya, that purusha, if you were to imagine a form for this entity, then the murdha, the head of this will be agni, will be plasma and flames, energy. Chakshushi chandra surya, all the bodies of light itself will be its eyes and will be its eyes. Meaning, see, what do the eyes do? The eyes see, right? For you to be able to see, you need light. Any heavenly body which throws light or which generates or reflects light will be its vision. Its head will be the Agni, like how you see on the head of a person, you see the hair, right? So those are the Agni of the Purusha. Dishaha Shrotre, and from the ears, we usually hear things, right? And it is told that the ether, which is the space, also called as dish, contained elements which made us able to hear. So it was often associated that the akasha and the shrotra were connected. Then vak vivrataha cha vedaha, and the mouth, when it was open, came forth the Vak. Whatever it spoke became the Vedas. Vayuhu pranaha, whatever that entity, if you were to breathe, it was the all the form of gases itself. Hridayam Vishwam, the entire world itself is its Hridaya, is its heart. Asya Padbhyam Prithvi, and then the 2 feet of it issued for the Prithvi, the earth or the solid matter. Eshaha Sarva Bhuta Antaratma. And then this is not some exotic cosmic Purusha sitting in the galaxy. No, no. This is the Atma itself, the Sarva Bhuta Antaratma, the self which is enlivening each of us and each of the non-living and living things around us. That verily is that Purusha which is enjoying this very senses and sense organs through those Panchabhutas. Let me just scan through the commentary and see if there is anything new that he wants to add. Uh, Nothing really substantial I wanted to highlight. You can read through those lines of commentary. तस्मादग्निः समिधो यस्य सूर्यः सोमात् पर्जन्य ओषधयः पृथिव्याम् पुमान् रेतः सिञ्चति योषितायाम् बह्वीः प्रजाः पुरुषात् सम्प्रसूताः तस्मात् पुरुषात् अग्निः समिधः यस्य समिधः अग्निः सूर्यः यस्य समिधः सूर्यः सोमात् पर्जन्यः ओषधयः पृथिव्याम् पुमान् रेतः सिञ्चति योषितायाम् बह्वीः प्रजाः पुरुषात् सम्प्रसूताः. So now, tasmad agnihi. Now from that Purusha, samidhaha suryaha yasya samidhaha eva suryaha agnihi cha. No, no. So tasmad agnihi jataha. So the kriya pada here is jata. You must take this to mean jataha. What were born from what and what. So tasmat, from the Purusha came the Agni, and which means flames and fire or heat. What caused this heat on earth? It is the fuel, which is the Surya. The Surya itself is the cause of this Agni on earth. Right? That is pretty acceptable. Somat Parjanyah Oshadhayah Prithivyam Jataha. So from the Soma, while the Surya caused the Agni, the Soma caused Parjanya, which means rain or clouds, and from those clouds on earth, Prithivyam, Oshadhayah Jataha. Oshadhaya means plants, vegetation. So you can think of it this way. The Surya represents the masculine energy, whereas Soma represents the more feminine energy. The feminine energy, which is often represented with water and coolness, brought the vegetation on earth, whereas the masculine energy, often associated with the solar plexus and Agni, brought fire and energy. And through these two, Puman, the man, that is the male species of every organism, Retas Sinchati, started procreating through sexual reproduction. Retas Sinchati Yoshitayam, into the women, it sprinkles its semen. its seeds, and through this combination of male and female, Bahviv Prajaha, so many more organisms, offsprings came to be born out of Purushat Samprasutaha. They came to be created. So, all in all, you can either think of this Puman and Yoshita to mean the actual awareness and the material outside, which is in Sankhya language, it is the Purusha and the Prakriti, or the Shiva and the Shakti, right? The Puman and the Yoshita, Uma and Om. These two, when they came together, these two masculine and feminine forces, the yin and the yang, when they came together, they gave rise to a multitude of all sorts of organisms in the world. So you need not literally take it to mean sexual reproduction, but also just coming together of two dual forces, two opposing but complementary forces. When they came together, it sprung up, it manifested into so many pluralitude of organisms. And the Purusha, the Puman, came from the Agni and Surya, whereas the Yoshita, the woman, the female, the feminine, came from the Soma and Prithvi. Is this clear? Any questions so far? All right. तस्मादृचः सामयजूंषि दीक्षा यज्ञाश्च सर्वे क्रतवो दक्षिणाश्च संवत्सरश्च यजमानश्च लोकाः सोमो यत्र पवते तत्र सूर्यः तस्मात् ऋचः साम यजूंषि दीक्षाः यज्ञाः च सर्वे क्रतवः दक्षिणाः च संवत्सरः च यजमानः च लोकाः सोमः सूर्यः च यत्र पवते तत्र जाताः इति. A pretty straightforward mantra is just saying what are the different things which were born through this union of Shiva and Shakti, the Prakriti and Purusha, of awareness with nature, of the spirit and matter. With this combination of spirit and matter, what came about are the familiar things. The richest Sama Yajumshi, all music, poetry, and prose, which talk about such self-referential knowledge, came about. All religious ideas sprung out from there. All the dikshas, all vratas, all disciplines, all exchanges, all tapas, all yajna, all kratavaha, all dana adi dharmas, all the dana, dakshina, where you're just giving fees and so on and so forth, you're exchanging goods and services. All such processes, along with the protocols for those, sprung up. Samvatsaraha cha. So samvatsara is the measure of time, right? So in a time, in a given season, you would do certain things. So such a timetable, Yajamana, the host, the lokas, all the realms itself, where Surya and Chandra are the two LED incandescent bulbs. One is very bright, one is the night lamp. So all across those worlds where the Surya and the Soma shine, that is where the feminine and the masculine energies can shine, all such lokas were created from that Purusha. All in all, it's just delineating all the different kinds of Srishti. तस्माच्च देवा बहुधा सम्प्रसूताः साध्या मनुष्याः पशवो वयांसि प्राणापानौ व्रीहियवौ तपश्च श्रद्धा सत्यं ब्रह्मचर्यं विधिश्च. Again, tasmat, from that entity came forth all the devas itself. All ideas of devas, of creative forces which lord over the forces of nature and of consciousness. They came about because each of them have a different proportion and sovereignty over nature. See, first of all, spirit and matter are uh, the two parents. From them came all of these things, and each of them have their own genes of spirit and matter in varying proportions. So some of them, if they have more spirit, they seem to be more intellectual, means sorry, more introspective and have more Shiva-like tendencies or spirit-like tendencies. Some of the creations have more Shakti-like tendencies, which is more material and more manifest and more dynamic. So, and similarly, Devas are one such children of these. Bahudha samprasutaha sadhyaha, even saints, manushyaha, humans, pashavaha, other creatures, vayamsi, all birds, prana, pano, vrihi, yamau, intakes and inlets and outlets, vrihi, yamau, uh, cereals and pulses, tapaha, all forms of tapasya, all forms of fortitude and formidableness, shraddha, which is hope and faith, and then satya, which is morality, and then brahmacharya, which is once again the path which is leading back towards the union of Shiva and Shakti, of spirit and matter, the Soma and Surya, Vidhishcha, and then whatever injunctions, the protocol that one must follow, all of it came verily from the same being by the communion of these two forces. Tasmat can also just mean afterwards, next and next and next in the creation. सप्त प्राणाः प्रभवन्ति तस्मात् सप्तार्चिषः समिधः सप्त होमाः सप्त इमे लोका येषु चरन्ति प्राणा गुहाशया निहिताः सप्त 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 प्राणाः प्रभवन्ति. Then came the seven pranas. Tasmat sapta archishah, the seven fires. Samidhah sapta homaha. Then the samidh, the fuels. Then the Sapta Homas, the seven sacrifices. Sapta ime lokaha, in the seven words, Bhur, Bhuva, Suva, Maha, Jana, Tapa, Satyam. Yeshu, in all those words, Pranaha Charanti, the life forces are continuously transacting between these seven words, these seven realms. Guhashayaha Nihitaha. Guhashayaha, they are hidden in the Guha, in the secret heart. The heart cave is literally what Guhashaya means. Nihitaha sapta sapta. These sevenfold manifestations are hidden within the heart caves of every living creature. That is what even the translation attests to. So all in all, it's just saying that different pranas, different yogic pranas, not just these five, but other varieties of these pranas also came to be. The Sapta Dhatus, you can perhaps think of Ayurveda, and then the seven flames, which we talked about in yesterday's class. And then the different kinds of sacrifices, also talked about the Darsha Purnamasa, Agnihotra, Atithi Satkara, all of those. And the seven lokas, everything has sprung out of that very Akshara. And where do these pranas reside? They reside within an unknown territory, at the core being of living creatures itself. Because if you see by definition, when you say a living being, you're already talking about life. When you say a living being is like an organism, like some system, where is the life force? It is at the central. It's at the center. It's the central definition of a living being. So it makes more metaphorical and figurative sense there as well. We shall look at a couple more mantras and then we shall wrap it up. अतः समुद्रा गिरयश्च सर्वे स्मात्स्यन्दन्ते सिन्धवः सर्वरूपाः अतश्च सर्वा ओषधयो रसश्च येनैष भूतैस्तिष्ठते ह्यन्तरात्मा. Ataha Samudraha, and from this Purusha itself came forth, from this entity came forth Samudraha, Giraya, Sarve, Asmat Syandante Sindhavaha Sarvarupaha, excuse me, Atascha Sarvaha Oshadhayaha Rasaha Cha Yena Yesha Bhutaihi Tishthate Hi Antaratma. Finally, all the oceans, mountains, rivers, oceans, seas of all kinds, sarva, oshadhaya, all vegetation, all rasa, all bhavas, all fluids, all chemicals, yena yeshaha bhutaihi tishthate, yena antaratma bhutaihi tishthate, and everything else which the bhutas have constituted, everything has come from that Purusha alone, through which this Antaratma is existing. Yena Antaratma Tishthate. Meaning, all these forces of nature, that of diversity that we see around us, all this ecosystem, biosphere, and so on, all of it is sustaining the sense of duality, is it not? It's creating the sense of there is a boundary that this is I, this is Sudarshan, and this is the laptop before me, which is made of certain metals and minerals. This is the body which I am experiencing, which is made of carbon, some fluids, some water which has come from some oceans, rain, some rivers, and so on. Each of these have come from different parts of nature. But still, all of it is sustaining one simple thing, which is it's enforcing the boundary of me and the other, of I and the other, the Atma and the Anatma, what I consider to be myself and what I consider to be something else apart from me. In physics terms, we call this boundary as something which is demarcating what is considered to be a part of the system and what is considered to be the surroundings. Is it not? So this very manifestation of the externalities is helping the belief of duality thrive, this Antaratma thrive. Any inputs so far? Any questions?
No. Thank you.
So far we have talked about all the different, now all of the mantras have started naming, they have started enlisting all the different kinds of creation which has happened through the union of Shiva and Shakti, of masculine and feminine powers. It's not merely male and female, but the masculine powers of the universe and the feminine powers of the universe. For example, heat and cold, gravity and you can say repulsion, electricity and magnetism, or any of these dual forces of the nature itself that we see around. In fact, there is something supreme than these actual manifested dualities, which is called as which is represented figuratively as the Surya and the Soma, the sun and the moon. They are representative placeholders for Agni and Apas, of fire and of water, right? They are just placeholders. So such dualistic forces, the spirit and matter, were first created by that Akshara, and with the union of this Shiva and Shakti, the spirit and matter, so many things came about. All the mantras so far have been talking about all those kinds of creations. And now, Purusha evedam vishvam karma tapo brahma paramritam etadyo veda nihitam guhayam So vidya granthim vikirati hasomya purusha evedam vishwam karma tapo brahma paramritam एतद्यो वेद निहितं गुहायां सो विद्या ग्रंथिं विकिरति ह सौम्य. So all in all, it is saying, instead of talking about all of this in great detail, I will just summarize and say, Purusha eva idam sarvam vishwam. That entire entity which we started off with, that Akshara itself is all this universe, all this manifestation, including oneself and the surrounding. Both the system and the surrounding together is that Akshara, is that universal set, which includes karma, all kinds of action and phenomena, tapas, all kinds of heat and energy exchanges, all kinds of Brahma, all Brahma itself, which is the expansion itself, and para amritam, and all feelings of stability, of happiness, which is what we often call as ananda or amrita, of changelessness, of decaylessness, of deathlessness, all that we subconsciously aspire towards, and we express this very same desire through so many things of our life. We crave people, we crave partners, we crave spouses, we crave fame, we crave understanding, we crave acceptance, we crave uh, physical stability, psychological uh, fitness, health, and stability of life, keeping our dependents happy, and all of these things is one very desire alone, which is that of para amritam, and that itself is the gene of Akshara. Etadyaha veda nihitam guhayam. And this one who understands truly and realizes oneself within one's own heart. Guha here means cave. What it means is within one's own void of being. If you just keep thinking, close our eyes, and when we do all of this, sitting in silence, if we think enough, we will actually hit a blank wall. That blankness itself is the cave, the guha that the Vedanta speaks about. So, inside that blankness, if one were to realize it, it says very yogically that saha, such a person, male or female, whatever, it doesn't matter, avidya granthim vikirati iha. Iha eva. Here itself, they will have torn asunder, they'll render asunder the avidya granthim, the knots of ignorance, of unawareness. Because all of what we are doing, though it is in the right intention of going into that paramrita, it is being expressed in limited ways because of our unawareness of our nature, is what it says. So, because of this, avidya, which are like knots of confusion, existential crisis, midlife crisis, full life crisis, quarter life crisis, so much confusion is there in our own minds about ourselves, our personality, how we relate to the world, so many questions, so much skepticism, so much whether to believe this or not. So, all of that avidya granthi, which is like a cluttered knots, entangled knots, those are getting just cut off. Not even untangling, they're just cut off. Vikirati, they're cut and scattered away, they're thrown away. So it's a very wonderful, radical way of expressing poetically what happens if one were to accept completely that everything around is that oneness alone. I feel this is one of the more powerful, uh, radically Advaitic verses. Do you see any value in such unification, Arya? Do you see that it would do any good?
Um, I'm a little bit confused of like I need to go through this again to have a feel for the shloka.
Okay,
Um,
that's fair.
so
Yes.
so you're going through all this crisis, and then if you don't have any guidance or somebody to come and break the blank wall, you're going to be stuck in your own world and there's no escape. Is that what it means?
Uh, no, it's actually talking about, it's actually, in my view, it's talking about the solution to such crisis. The solution to such crisis which comes from the crisis is this avidya. It posits that it conjectures that the if we look at it deeply enough, the reason for all our crisis is unawareness. It is uh, irrecognition of irrecognition of the truth is what the fundamental supposition of the Vedanta is. So it's saying if we were to admit to this and if we were to agree that yes, this is the reason for all my mishappenings and my crisis and catastrophes, then what is the solution to this problem? It says the solution is to look. It is because avidya is unawareness. It can only be counted with awareness. The Veda, the awareness that everything, the entire creation, good, bad, and ugly, me, the other, the the good days, the happy days, the sunny days, the dark, cloudy days, all of it comes from the same old manifestation, whether I call it God, I call it myself, I call it some cosmos, I call it nature, whatever I may call it as. But if one can actually see for reality that there is something, that unifying thread across all scenarios of life, across all calamities of life,
This
then
would be say like in this kind of crisis, it will be like staying in a Kupamanduka because you're Kupamanduka, you're not aware there is another outside world.
yes,
So once you become aware that there's another world, then you want to come out of that Kupamanduka. Another world could be um, getting away from this bondage in the sense stuck in your own thoughts and stuck in your own crisis. If you want to break away from it, you should be aware that there's another world, there's something beyond it, and there's some answer to it. So once you become aware of it, then you try to come out of it, either with help or no help, self-help.
exactly. That's a nice way of saying that. Yes, the avidya itself is the kupa mandukatva, correct? That I think I am this limited little being. I am, I'm stuck in the storyline that I've told so far in my life, the story I've told about myself, and when something which disrupts the story happens, I am not able. I'm stuck in the same. I want to. I insist that I continue this story, whereas some random calamities have happened in my life which are not allowing that story to continue. So that is the Kuba Mandukata which I can sense. And so when I can step out of my own limitedness and be aware of a higher possibility of a larger world, the big picture, that yes, like you're rightly saying, then that would be a good escape away from uh, that stress, those painful times. Great. So that was wonderful indeed. We have come to the end of this particular subsection. So we'll start the next subsection tomorrow. For now, if you do you have anything else to add, Arya?
No, thank you.
Dhanyawada. So we'll then do the small meditation. We'll sit in silence for a while, about 4 minutes, and then we will wrap this class up.